Oh, good evening. Welcome to the Ashland Parks and Recreation Commissioners meeting of May 4th. And it's a Zoom meeting, obviously, and it's a study session. And welcome everyone from staff, commissioners, and the public. So I just want to point out that it is a study session. So we're going to be focusing on asking questions and listening to information and hopefully refraining from most of our discussion, because all these items that if they require action, they'll be coming up either next week or the near future. So that would be the appropriate time to actually make policy related discussions. So first order of business tonight is East Main preliminary design presentation. I believe our consultants are here, and Michael, do you want to introduce them and kick us off?
Yeah, I'll just do that really quickly and just give you a little background, which I'm sure Piper and Aaron will as well. But East Main Park is kind of a replacement park for the YMCA park, which was sold several years ago back to the YMCA. I think we've given a lot of history about that over the years, so I'm not going to go into that much. This park is fully funded through transactions that took place with liquidating land like that park and adjacent land that was sold to the Housing Authority of Jackson County for low-income housing, and some food and beverage. At this point, we are in the planning stages. We're looking at preliminary plans, and our consultants, Terrain Landscape Architecture, led by Piper von Chamier and Aaron Gabacorta, are here tonight to go over the latest plans. Last thing I'll say is we did present a version of these plans to the public, and I'm blanking on the date now, but I'm sure Piper has it in her presentation. And since that time, we've taken the comments that were received, plus comments that were received from the East Main Park Working Group, and have made changes. And tonight we are not only presenting these plans to the Parks Commissioners, but also this is the first time that these changes have been viewed in public in general. So we're excited to go over these with everybody, and specifically with the commissioners, and to get your feedback. I'll turn it over to Piper.
I'm muted. Mute.
Okay, can everyone see this? We're
Yes.
good? Okay, great. Yes, thank you. Great to be here. What a lovely afternoon it is. Looking forward to when we can all meet in person. As Michael mentioned, we've had a few meetings. We're going to go through kind of the timeline of each of these meetings, and I'll show you the plan as it has progressed. Some of this stuff Michael already went through, so we'll just go through it. So welcome and intros, we kind of did that. We're going to continue to do that. Talk a little bit about our process and the draft design that we've gone through, and then we'll go to the Q&A. The summary and next steps is kind of part of the Q&A as well. As Michael mentioned, replace this piece of land, replace the YMCA park. And Michael, please jump in if you want to talk about any of these slides specifically.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and do these ones, since I didn't realize these were in here. But so this is what I was talking about before. Some of the other points to be made here is that we went through a process and engaged the public, not only for the sale of YMCA Park, but the purchase of this East Main Park, and there has been wide community support throughout the process. We do have a connection to the neighborhood. The parcels, when you include the 1 acre that was just acquired, equal 6.5 acres, and that is actually the same size as what the YMCA Park was. You can go to the next one. And you can just go ahead and click through all of these.
Okay.
So this is just where the money is coming from. We like to show this because I think there is a concern whenever we start talking about new parks and where's the money coming from, and is it new money or is it money that's already there? And this is money that's already there. The blue parcel that you can see there is the YMCA park, and that's the dark blue, and that's 6.5 acres. That was sold in July of 2017. Now, it was a public park, but the YMCA did have exclusive use of it if they requested it by a certain time each year. And by the time we ended up looking at selling this to the YMCA, they were pretty much using it exclusively all year. And so what we got out of that $480,000 was the depreciated value of the buildings. There's a restroom, there's a parking lot, there is a small playground, there's other infrastructure that we put in. So that was the price. The red lot next to it was sold to the Housing Authority of Jackson County for $1,091,000. The little light blue one was sold to the city of Ashland, or back to the city of Ashland, for $117,000 in 2015. And I'm just going to go way back here and just remind everybody that the reason why we did that was so that tree that became tree of the year, right as the city was thinking about cutting it down to provide space for affordable housing. That tree is still there, and we sold that small piece of property to them so that they could just move their plans further to the west and keep that tree without having to take it down to accomplish their plans for affordable housing. And then there's some food and beverage funds and some SDC funds. The yellow property is the one that we just talked about. We purchased that in 2018. We were able to negotiate a reduced price on that, and we're able to get it for lower than what it was listed. And then the 1 acre purchase actually did take place just recently, and that's the orange piece. So is there another one?
Oh, yeah.
Piper?
Sorry. Yeah. Oh,
okay.
but yeah.
Okay, and then the next slide. We usually like to go over with when we're doing this presentation, why is this important right now? And the commissioners go through a process and adopt goals every 2 years, and they coincide with the biennial budget. And that biennial budget is 2 years of funding and 2 years of planning and 2 years of implementation. And during this 2-year period that we're in right now, the Parks Commissioners had made the building the East Main Park, including a dog park, a bike skills park, and pump track, as their number 4 goal. They have about 15, but a lot of times between 15 to 20. We're only showing the top 5 here, and this one did rank in the top 5 at number 4. And then I think that's probably it for me. We did do a community input session. You can see the date on these. These are October 24th, 2019. So just a few months, 5 months before COVID, before we kind of just shut everything down. And we met with the public in a meeting at the high school, split everybody up into tables and kind of did a mini charrette process. And what we did was we provided some pretty basic shapes to the group and just said, okay, this is kind of a typical dog park. This is kind of a typical playground area. This is a typical play field, those types of things. And then we also gave them paper and told them that they had free range and they could go through and design whatever they wanted on this park, and gave them the opportunity. And all 6 tables came up with designs that some factors were pretty similar and some were really different. And from this, we were able to get to the conceptual plan, which is where we started this whole process of design and where Piper came in. So I am going to turn it over to Piper for real now.
Thank you. We do have quite a few slides to go through, so we're going to kind of zoom through them, as quickly as we can. If there's any questions that happen during this process, please let me know, or if you have any comments, just bring it up. I think this can be kind of a conversation with y'all. I'm Piper Von Chaumier, principal at Terrain. This is Erin Gambacorda. She's a designer at Terrain. I live here in Ashland. I have 2 kids that go to school just down the street from here, from this park, or the future park rather. And we're pretty excited about seeing this park come to fruition. Erin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Erin. Like Piper said, I'm a designer with Terrain. I'm originally from the Midwest, but been on the West Coast for about 16 years and love the West Coast landscape and love parks and opportunities to be outside. So I'm excited about this one as well.
Just a little bit about our process as we go through most of our projects, in particular this one, discovery. So we've done site analysis. There's been some community outreach with the working group and the public listening session. That's also going to continue through this next phase after, as we continue forward. And program development, looking at how the space is programmed, who's going to be using it, how are they going to be using it. And then after this step, so the discovery is kind of, we're at the tail end of that. Then we're going to go into the refinement, which is design development, coordinating with the civil, a little bit more with the traffic consultant, with the pump track designer. We'll be refining the materials. We'll really be looking at the safety concerns, of the playground, of, the transportation and, throughout the whole site. And then looking through it, doing a kind of a cost analysis as we're going through this, not only of the build out, but also the maintenance so that we really keep it on the lower maintenance for a park. Then the final step is the implementation with the final coordination with all of with the team in the city, construction documents, bidding and permit, and then finally construction. On the right-hand side, you'll see the project structure. It's the City of Parks, comes down to terrain, landscape architecture, and we have several sub-consultants that make up our team. Back to the approach part, this is really a part, the community, there's a couple lenses that we're designing this park through, and this is, the community. We really want the community to be a part of it. We've had, like I said, several public listening sessions. The next phase will be going out to the different user groups to really pull in as much input as we can about how they will use it, the details that they might want, the materials that they prefer, the size of things, the flow of things, trying to make everything accessible by all the users with the universal design methods that we're going to be implementing. And then the other lens is the ecosystem approach, which, kind of looks at the whole entire site and how it functions and breathes and grows through time. I think an important part of this, of course, because it's such a hot button, is water use. And so we do have a diagram about water use later on in the presentation, and we'll continue to develop that as we go through design development. And also maintenance, we want to keep everything low maintenance, minimal grading, vegetative buffers. We'd like to make this part of the wildlife corridor for the pollinators, the bees and the butterflies, and then trying to use low impact design for all of our stormwater approaches. So back to that slide, the community meeting that happened in the fall of 2019. And as Michael mentioned, there was kind of a kit of parts that they gave to the tables, and they were able to arrange the dog park, the pump track, the community garden, the open space, the play area on their sheet of paper with their little Post-it notes or the little cutouts. And so that little kit of part really helped us look at the different program elements that came out of that community meeting. But we were looking at that and going, okay, what else might this park want? How else might the users use it, especially those that haven't come to a meeting or not able to come to a meeting? So let's see, August 18th of last year, we had a public listening session, and we didn't present a plan. We presented a diagram showing basically what came out of that original public meeting, with the dog park, the natural play or the play area in the center, the trails and the kind of the natural area, the community garden, the pump track, and the skills area, and of course the parking. So we just showed this diagram, looked at lots of pictures to bring up some fun ideas, and really took note of some of the things that the public said. during that meeting. So after that, our next steps after that first public listening session was to continue with the data collection, the development of this, the schematic design development, and then the next public listening session was planned to be 2 months, but got delayed a little bit. Part of the continuing of the data collection is a Survey Monkey that was sent out about a month later after that first public listening session. And I don't know if everyone saw the survey that happened last fall, maybe. So we're going to go through some of the statistics that came out of that. And so the survey, the public was invited to provide demographic information, rank their interest in a large list of park activities and structures, and answer open-ended questions regarding 3 key areas: the dog park, pump tracks, and community gardens. And Erin's going to run us through some of these numbers here.
Yeah, so we didn't want to necessarily read all of these numbers out to you, but we did want to share this information because it's a good look at, 1,000 people or more responded to the survey, and it's a good look at the kinds of things that they're interested in, and it allows us to get a sense of what people want to see in this park, and that helps inform the design. So most of the people lived in Ashland, and most of them have children under, I shouldn't say most, over half have children under 18 and have dogs. So there's a good support out there for the play area and the dog park and the pump track and all of that, as well as some of the other pieces of the park. So the top activities that people ranked were the pump track, walking paths, pollinator plants, picnic areas, and playground. But you can see we listed the other things that kind of came up because of the way the survey is structured. I think people can answer, provide multiple answers to some of these questions. So it just kind of gives you an idea of where things were ranked in the results. For the dog park, there were some specific questions and then some more open-ended questions as well. So the things that people would like to see in the dog park included shade trees, a large area for playing ball, a walking loop, and benches. And then these are the more open-ended types of responses that people gave about things that they like and dislike about dog parks that they go to. So people are interested in, of course, a fenced enclosure and a double gated entry. Again, the shade trees and large open space, possibly some water, possibly separating small dogs or having multiple gated areas, agility or enrichment structures, trails, poop bags, scoops, trash cans, and those hygiene kinds of things. And then possibly a spray or hose for rinsing off. Things people disliked are the kinds of things you might expect, but there's a good list to review if you're interested. We can go on. For pump tracks, 54% of households felt like they would benefit from a pump track, and the kinds of things that they would like to see. If you've seen any of the pictures that popped up so far for a pump track, they have a range of options for the skills and the way that they're structured. So there's a good support in the community for the specific types of things that they want to see. So we're also looking forward to meeting with these focus groups. Like Piper said, we'll meet with smaller groups to get even more specific on the design of those items. These are the things that people liked or disliked at pump tracks that they've been to before. So quality of the build and having multiple options or tracks are things that came up with the things that people really like. So we actually have consultants for the pump track as well that will help ensure the quality and that this is a good course that people are really going to enjoy and be able to take advantage of. community gardens. So the types of things that people like to see at the community garden are key things like the deer and dog protective fencing. It'll have a gate with a lock, easy access from vehicular parking, tools or storage shed, drip irrigation, composting, pollinator friendly, and some shade.
And I just want to add, it says 24% might use a community garden, with the remainder not likely, but there is, and I don't know the number exactly, but there is quite a waiting list to get into a community garden here in Ashland.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah. So again, things that people like and dislike that they could write in for the community garden specifically. And I know there's a community garden group that's interested in providing even further input. So that's going to be great. Transportation. So back to a little bit of general park information. About half the people would drive to the park and about half would walk or bike. So we're planning to accommodate all of those with vehicular parking and bike parking. There will be sidewalks added along East Main Street, and people can come in through the neighborhood as well from Abbott, I believe. And there's a pedestrian connection, and I'm forgetting the name of the street, but we'll see it on
Crocker,
the plans. Sorry.
I think it's Crocker.
Thank you.
So after the Survey Monkey, we started to work with our consultant, our traffic consultant. She has created a draft traffic analysis impact report. During this process, we met with the city public works and planning, and because East Main is a county road, we also met with the county and had several meetings just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. During this process, it came to our attention that we should probably go to the Ashland Transportation Commission so that we could get their blessing on the the entrances to this park and how people might, the vehicular traffic might come in and out of the park. This was one of the things that one of the slides that we showed them. So you can see that from the traffic study off of East Main, less than 12 trips were counted daily for pedestrian and bicycles, with 70% of 30 trips being vehicular. Down off of Abbott, it's kind of flip-flopped. So down there, it's less cars coming in off of that portion of Abbott when they did their traffic counts, and there's more pedestrian and bikes in that area. Similarly, off of Brooks, sorry, it's not Crocker, it's Brooks, there's the little pedestrian connection, a little sidewalk. So it's estimated that about 6 trips would come through there. And that's of course just pedestrian and vehicular. There's also, during this research, we found that there's RVTD has planned for a future bus stop up here, somewhere along East Main. So we'll have to accommodate that as we plan further for the park. The traffic consultant's conclusions were that the street capacity is sufficient to support the development. There's adequate connections exist for all traffic modes or will be provided, and the safety has been evaluated and no concerns were identified. That was November, so a few months forward, we started to put our pencils to the paper and do some design work from the original, just simple diagrams that we had done once we had gathered all this information from the public survey and doing some research, and then with the traffic analysis. So in March, 2 months ago, almost exactly, we had another public listening session where we debuted a schematic plan. And here is the schematic plan, and you can see that it's very similar. Oh, hold on. Oh, yeah. It's very similar to the diagram that was originally shown to the public, but also the diagrams that came out of the 2019 meeting, where there's the dog park on the east side, the pump track skills area on the west side, a central parking area that comes off of East Main, central area with a sports court down here, a big natural area that's, you know, pretty wild and low maintenance with some walking and running trails. And then the community garden down here in the southwest corner. So that meeting was really helpful. We got a lot of great feedback from the public during the comments that came in over chat. And then also they emailed Tara. And so, you know, some of their other comments, if they didn't either get to make the meeting or they didn't get to put their stuff into chat. So we were able to take all of those comments and make some changes to this meeting. We also met with the working group and they gave feedback. So there was some back and forth between May 3rd and today. So here's today. So here's an updated plan, and I'll go through some of the changes that we've made in the last 2 months based on the public comment in the working group. The community garden over here has grown. It's about, it's almost half an acre. The skills park and the pump track hasn't changed. However, just as a little side note, one of the next steps is to is for our pump track consultant to start their work. So this is really a placeholder showing where all of that activity is going to go. The design of it is going to come in the next steps. The dog park also got bigger. So do you remember, Erin, how big it is now?
I don't. If you have the black and white plan slide, it might be on that one.
Okay, we'll go to that one next.
Okay.
In this design, there's two separate areas. There's the, you know, what we're calling the larger dog park, but it's really just a larger area over here on the right-hand side, the smaller over here on the left-hand side, a shared shade structure. So there would be a fence that would go in between with the gate so that, you know, that's kind of killing two birds with one stone with one shade structure. Double gates coming into both of these areas. Over here in the larger area, we're going to be directing a lot of the stormwater to these kind of very specific areas. And we'd like to have that become kind of part of the feature of the dog park so that, you know, when it's muddy, the dogs can get muddy. That's what they love to do. We have our parking area in here that's, you know, along this central access. And as you come into here, this is the central nature play area with a little shade structure and some planting that comes around here. These two little red buildings right here are bathrooms. So this would be like a porta potty with a little shelter over it. Here's a little shade structure for the pump track area. Another larger shade structure that would have more picnic tables for larger gatherings. And then a central pathway that goes all the way from East Main from the sidewalk through all the way to Abbott Street, and a little gravel parking area here. There's also a pedestrian loop that will go all the way around the site, and along East Main, you'll see better in the black and white a little bit. The sidewalk kind of meanders, so it's not just straight down East Main, which gives a better pedestrian experience along a fairly busy road. So this loop continues and it comes around both the east and west side and then connects back up to all of these walking paths. So let's go to the next one. Shows a little bit more of a diagram. You can see over here some examples of the shade structures, and one of the things that came out, you know, in the last 2 months was putting some solar panels on these shade structures, which is a really great idea. Here's our little porta potty with the structure, the shade structure over it, which keeps the, you know, it's a low maintenance solution for this sort of a facility. The bus shelter and some other shade sail things. In our next phase, we'll be really looking at what is the shade, what are the shade structures made out of, you know, what are the actual sizes, what's the shapes, how they're constructed. So that will be in the next phase. So the community garden here, it's about 0.45. The dog park is 0.85, and that's both the larger and the smaller, the smaller area. We have a 50 by 94 sports court, just a multi-sport court here in the center of the park. It's surrounded by mound or picnic and put down a blanket. The central play area here is really nature-based. We have a little bit of a berm that's connecting both the lawn area and the nature play area. We'll get into, we have each of these areas blown up so we can get into them a little bit more. And then of course the pump track and skills course up here on the west side of the park. Some of this got cut up off there, but so this is the community garden. And originally we started to lay out some spots and some plots and, you know, gathering areas and try to figure out where, you know, put a design into this. And so it was brought to our attention that rather than us doing the design in the beginning, we should meet with the community garden groups and have them design this community garden. So we're really just providing the framework, which is the fence and the storage area, the shed, this covered area, some shade structure in this, you know, so that they can get out of the heat and come and, you know, do their potting and prepare for their work day. We have a composting area that's easily accessible off of the parking area so that the soil can be dumped and then put into this composting area and vice versa. Here's some ideas that we came up with. There's so many more. These are some of the pictures that we showed the public at our public listening sessions. Erin, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So the central play area it has a range of surfaces and places to play so that there's kind of a range of activities that you can have all in this central area, still pretty close to the parking and still just off of the main pathways and things. The sort of peanut shaped area is what we're thinking of as more the children's play area. We're thinking a artificial turf surface for the majority of it, and then maybe some wood fiber under some of the play structure elements. As Piper said, we're thinking natural play as well, a lot of logs and boulders, as you can see in the imagery off to the left. And then around that, we have a little track for smaller kids to ride trikes and scooters, things like that, that kind of keeps them in this loop in the central area. On the other side of that path, we have a mowed lawn so that there is still that area that you can spread out a picnic blanket, or you can have a Tai Chi or a yoga class or something like that. The multi-sport court is again pretty open and large enough to accommodate a lot of different sports. We have some extra space and benches off to the side of that too for people to hang out and set their equipment down, things like that. Oh, and a picnic shelter, you know, close enough that parents can sit and watch kids in the play area and still be right there, but in the shade as well.
And we're proposing a little split rail fence around this, just this northern edge, just to keep the kids in, since the parking lot is right adjacent to this area. As I mentioned, the next step is to get Velo Solutions to start their designing of this area. So this is really a placeholder showing kind of the size and allocating the space for it. We've been working with them already a little bit, and you know, the pump track, rather than showing what we're showing originally, was a beginning and more of an intermediate one, with the beginning being the smaller one, the beginners being the smaller one, and the more intermediate being the larger one. We think we can combine those, which is going to save some space. and make, just make it a little bit more interesting for everyone to use. And they'll also be working with us to for the skills park, which is the brown pathways, let's say, which is more ramps and little hills that would be made out of the soil around it. This is a little covered space so that someone can sit there and a parent could watch their child as they're on the pump track or on the skills course area. We'd like to provide spaces that, like a little mechanics area for the bikes so that people could work on their bikes if they have a flat or they need to make some adjustments while they're visiting the park. It was also brought up that this would probably be a good spot for, bike. If there's a group of kids with a teacher, this might be a good place as a starting point, as a meeting point for those little community lessons. Erin?
So for the dog park, we've tried to incorporate a lot of the things that we saw in the survey results, including the agility equipment and some of the more basic things as well, like drinking fountains, trash cans. There's a shade structure there with some benches under it. Shade trees as well. And I think Piper mentioned earlier, but we kind of have stormwater planting coming into the dog park as well, thinking that it seems like a good opportunity to expand the stormwater and give the dogs that kind of fun environment to romp through. So this one is separated. So we have sort of a smaller area, which could be for small dogs, or it could just be that we have two separate areas so people kind of go where they feel comfortable. And I think that's about it. She's already mentioned that there's a walking trail off to the east side that takes you all the way around the dog park and into the rest of the park.
So this is just kind of a first pass at looking at planting. I think one of the pictures that speaks the most to our approach with planting is meadow planting area, where you can imagine there's this mowed lawn, that's adjacent and around the sports court, and then right across the pathway from that would be more a wilder meadow, kind of natural meadows planting. We started to look at trees. This slide is probably 6 months old. So we started to look at trees and some options to use that are more ornamental. Since then, we've taken another pass at this, and in this next design development, we'll really start to dive more deeply into the plant communities that we'll be introducing into the park. There's going to be screening that needs to happen along the fence line. We want to pick the right trees, good shade trees, ornamental trees, some pollinator plants. Again, the meadow planting, and this will have to be, there'll have to be some research on the type of seed that we would use for that meadow planting. And then the stormwater treatment plants. Erin?
So the stormwater leads us right into these diagrams. We were trying to just take a look at the opportunities that we have in the park to capture all the stormwater and just use things like permeable paving, bioswales, and rain gardens to keep it on site and treat it or take advantage of it there. So you can see the purple color in the diagram on the left is some permeable paving in the main parking lot. That's probably in the form of some kind of paver. And in the community garden parking lot, that's a gravel parking lot. We didn't highlight them all, but we're also thinking that the majority of the walking paths throughout the park will either be a crushed gravel or a mulch or something else that's also permeable. The other two colors that you see there are either bioswales or rain gardens, just again, opportunities to capture that stormwater on the park site. The water use and maintenance levels diagram is just an illustration of how much water is being used where, and what kind of maintenance level we'd expect to see for those areas, partly based on, you know, what the surface material is, you know, what kind of planting it might be and that sort of thing. So you can see that the community garden and the mowed lawn are going to be, you know, you'd expect those to be the highest water use, and especially in the case of the mowed lawn, more maintenance. And then we just go up from there. The slightly lighter green is a lower water use and moderate maintenance, with some of these rain gardens and bioswales and more decorative plantings. And then we keep going up from there to less and less water use. We'd expect the meadow and the open spaces to be less water use, all the way to no water use and very low maintenance in areas that have established trees or around the perimeter where, you know, once they get established, those screening plantings and shrubs, we'd expect to be very low water use or no water use.
So the next steps, as I mentioned, start working with our bike consultant, Bella Solutions, to get into the design of the pump track and the skills course. You know, back to that stormwater slide, we'll be working with the civil engineer, you know, on that next step, particularly around the parking area and that right of way along East Main. And so he'll be helping us with that part, as well as lighting. And then, you know, the user group meetings with community gardeners, RVMBA, B-City, Sports Court Group, AZAC, and the neighborhood associations, among others. This is just a small list of a few groups that we could come up with that we know that we're going to be meeting with soon to, you know, get a little bit more granular into each of these areas and understand kind of their needs and wants and how they're going to be using that. So that's what we're calling the, you know, the design development phase of the park. And that's all we have. I do have a couple of, just in case people aren't familiar with pump tracks. There's so many different types. These are just some pictures that we came up with to share with the public listening at the public listening meeting in the beginning. Some of these are a little out there, but they're fun. And that's it. Do you have any questions or comments?
Thanks, Piper. I think that Commissioner Lawn, the intent tonight was to present this and then to get into questions and comments, and to see, we'd love to hear your opinions on how you think this is going. If you have any concerns, anything like that from each of the commissioners. I think we could, do you want to stay on the map or do you want to go off the map, commissioners?
Well, if we're going to stay on the map, then people are going to have to, I can't see everybody, so people are going to have to raise their hand digitally.
You want me to stop sharing? Would that be easier?
Yeah, we might have to, you might have to go back depending on the question. But yeah, why don't you stop sharing?
Okay.
But be prepared to move back. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, commissioners, Commissioner Eldridge.
This is more of a connectivity question. Thank you for the presentation, by the way. It's super exciting. Piper and Aaron, really appreciate it. Beautiful slides. I'm sure it's going to be a gorgeous park. I remember a conversation months back about how there wasn't really the resources to extend the bike or the central bike path to connect to this park. But I was excited to hear that you were talking about adding a sidewalk. Do you know how far that sidewalk is going to extend along East Main, or what are the current plans for that? Sorry, it's a little outside of the scope of the park, but I'm curious about how our kids
Yeah.
from Rolling will get there.
No, that's a really good question. And it's not necessarily outside of the scope of the park. One of the things that will have to happen in this first phase is the half right-of-way improvements along East Main. That's going to go from Clay to Crocker. I could show you on a map, but it's, Clay Street on the west and Crocker's to the east. And then the other thing that is going to be required is that Clay Street will have to be, it was originally slotted to be a bike boulevard. So for the development of this park, that will have to come to reality. So that will have to get striped, used as boulevard and designated as such.
Great. Wow, thanks.
Yes, Commissioner Lewis.
Yeah, my comment is how productive the March 3rd meeting was, and the fact that I think at one point there was probably 80 people that had viewed the presentation, and that staff got through all the questions. I think is something that might not have happened without the Zoom meetings, because it's just, you can't even put 80 people at the council chamber. So in some ways, this new Zoom medium is beneficial to have as many citizens view the presentation and then make comments on it, and the fact that we answered them all. So I see that as, and the two questions I wrote before the presentation are, the ones about the size of the garden and the size of the dog park, I thought were the two really big issues. And it seems like you were listening just like I was, and move towards the redesign. So I'm happy with the overall design. I think there's the maintenance issues and having staff look at those, but I mean a park's going to have some maintenance and weeds, and hopefully we can get volunteers and all that stuff to take care of all the real issues, which are the ongoing ones. But I think that the design it covers all the bases, and what a great addition. If we look at the Y Park and then we look at this design, we're light years ahead of the YMCA Park. So it would be a great community facility, I think, for the future. So I'm happy with how it's going.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Bachman.
I want to echo everybody's comments so far that this was a fabulous example of public engagement, and I hope we use it as a model going forward for other projects. It's essential to get people involved in this thing from the grassroots, and it was nice to see that work in this park. A couple of questions. There's a running along East Main, there's not only no sidewalk, but there's also a large ditch, for drainage. Is that going to get covered?
Yeah.
At least around the park, and maybe eventually, that's not the park scope problem, but that would be nice to cover that and like have that widen for a bike lane along East Main, but that's more Transportation Commission. I'm just wondering if in the park development, if that piece would be handled to get that, because it's kind of a attractive nuisance for kids, among other things.
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah. I can't show you, but so along the East Main, again, from Crocker to Clay, there'll be what they call curb tight. So there'll be a curb and then a sidewalk. And so that drainage ditch will, be filled in and covered with a sidewalk.
Right, so there'll be a
hard
culvert.
piped. Yeah.
The covered drainage, excellent. That nice to see that along that whole stretch. The other piece was connecting it up to the main bike path, the central bike path. How far is that? And is there at least a safe corridor for me or a kid to to come along the bike path and get into the park without having to, you know, drive down the middle of a road and go through somebody's yard or something.
Well, the Clay Street being a bike boulevard is designed to actually go down the middle of the road. That's what a bike boulevard would be, is a shared roadway. And generally they have very low traffic volumes. They have sharrows in the road. There's signage that says share the road, those types of things. But the issue right now with the bike path is that to get to Clay Street, you have to go under the overpass and cross the railroad tracks. And so it's not a perfect situation, but we're trying to do what we can with this project, and we do have limited ability to affect, you know, the bike path. But like Piper was saying, with Clay Street and encouraging the bike boulevard moving forward, and then also improvements on the street on East Main will make it more suitable for people walking and biking than it is now.
Okay, thanks. I just, particularly for sort of, not the very youngest children who would normally be supervised, but I'm a middle school guy. I went back in my professional life. And so kids of that age, going down a bike boulevard gives me nightmares. And so a dedicated bike path would be nicer, but I understand that's way beyond the scope of this discussion. I'm just throwing that out there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Bell.
I find this current design great, and it does look like you've already taken into consideration things that we've discussed along the way, and so terrific work. If RVTD is going to be putting bus stops on or right next to the entrance to the main entrance to the park off East Main, do we have to accommodate, or do we have to provide any cutout from what we're doing to make their bus stop structure buildable?
So that's a really good question. We don't have to, and I will have to go back to my notes because it's been 5 months or so, 6 months since we really talked about this. There isn't a pullover, so we don't have to do anything with the roads, you know, or it's not going to necessarily, the bus stop won't encroach into our site. We would, as far as the shelter, we will have to accommodate some sort of a pad for them to bring in their bus shelter.
And I think
Okay.
there was some flexibility in the size of that as well. They're
Yeah.
just excited to be able to incorporate that at this location for the future route that's going to go there.
Yeah, and it's complementary of our plan as far as getting people to the park and things like that. So we would
Yeah.
do what we could to work with them within the plan.
Okay. One other question I had is, I don't know if we talked a little bit about, I'm not sure if this is still something that's doable or within the budget, but is it possible to set up a charging station for electric bikes at that main structure next to the pump track? You know, if you have solar panels on the roof right there, it seems like it's plausible. I don't know if it's actually possible, but
Yeah, I don't.
We'll talk about that. That's the first time that's come up. It's a very good thing to be brought up at this point in time.
Yeah.
But I think we need to discuss that a little bit further before we can answer that, because I'm frankly not familiar with the infrastructure required for charging bikes. But I think we should look into it, and we can get back to you on that.
Yeah. Yeah, and this next phase, you know, this design development, we'll start looking more at like the utilities and the water and all of that sort of thing. So it's good that you did bring this up now so that we can see what we need to facilitate that.
okay. One I had for you is the last time that we talked about design, we were discussing where we're going to put the toilets or the ablutions. And I don't know if, I guess one thing that I didn't think about at the time was, do you have to come up with a certain minimum number based on the expected use of the park?
No, there isn't any code, let's say, that would require us to provide X amount for a square footage or for a usage. It's really up to our discretion.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be some large bank of porta potties, or I don't know, some other extensive structure somewhere. Okay.
No,
Well,
No.
we want to try to accommodate people as best we can, but Piper's right. This isn't an indoor building that building codes require a certain number of stalls and things like that. This is much different. Many parks don't have bathrooms at all. It's not a prerequisite for a park to have a bathroom.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I'm looking forward to hearing or working more on plant selection as well.
Other questions from commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Bachman.
You're on mute.
In the cycle area, has there been any discussion with Velo to the what extent they would chip in on the maintenance of that area? I think they'd be very interested in doing a lot of that on their own. Keep it the way they want it, the dirt track anyway.
So, Velo Solutions is, a big international firm that designs these pump tracks. The Skills Park area, the dirt part area is really going to come from the community and, the Rogue Valley Mountain Bike Association. A lot of that, my interpretation is that they're going to be even doing some of the construction of those jumps and bridges and things like that. And so I think that we could, have some sort of alliance with them to maintain that area. The
Right.
pump track itself.
Well,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry. Go ahead and finish.
The pump track itself is like no maintenance. It's asphalt and turf, fake lawn. There's no water use, there's no planting. So it's a very, no maintenance part of the park.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, so it is, Commissioner Bachman, yes. It's not Velo Solutions, it's RVMBA, but the answer to your question is yes. And it's been the idea right from the beginning. Not only would they help with the maintenance in the future, which could be pretty low, but they're also going to be part of designing it and potentially constructing it as well. So, and we're working with this group right now on redoing the dirt jumps down at the wastewater treatment plant as well. So they definitely have a vested interest in making sure that these facilities continue to be maintained well and relevant, as do we. We're not just going to give up on them, but we'll be working together as partners.
Okay, thanks for bringing me up to speed on that. I've got a steep learning curve here on some of these areas.
Yes, Commissioner Eldridge. You're on mute.
Just a comment. One thing that I really love about this park is the multi-generational aspect. I mean, I've heard comments from folks saying, "Oh, you're trying to put too much into one area," but when I've gone to towns like Corvallis or places where I've seen pump tracks and skate parks, they're entirely on their own, tucked into a little area. And as a parent, if you want to go there with your smaller kids or with as a family, you're basically just at this one spot and you don't have anything to do. But having this like mixed use and multi-generational sort of central place is wonderful for families that have little kids that want to play on the playground, and it looks like you still have a sight line towards seeing the pump track and areas to relax. And then also, I just think it's good for the community to bring dog owners and walkers and bikers and all of us sort of together instead of segregating these activities and that might appeal to different age groups and different generations. And so I'm really excited that there's a place that's going to reflect the diversity of Ashland and the diversity of uses. And I love that part of it. And I think it's just a cool mosaic. And yeah, I'm very excited about it. So I think that's a wonderful thing, that it's like this mishmash of all these different activities and appeals to all these different people in our town. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from commissioners? Well, it's been a great presentation. Thank you for Aaron and Piper for your help on this project, and we look forward to the next phase. And I think we've done what we're going to do tonight on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. We're looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Do we just
Okay,
leave or are you going to kick us out of
Yeah.
the?
Yeah, well, if you don't leave on your own, we're kicking you out. So
All right.
now you can stick around if you want. We won't kick you out, but
Okay.
we may put you in a waiting room though.
Yeah, you may just want to turn your video off.
Yeah.
Okay. Next on the agenda is Oak Knoll Golf Course budget considerations and drought impacts.
All right, so I want to just remind everybody that, as Commissioner Lont said earlier, this is a study session or a work session, and we're going over this information to educate and to get the information out there. We're doing it in public because the public needs to know about this as well. But we don't expect any decisions tonight, but we do want to inform you and give you an idea of where we are, what we're looking at, what we're anticipating, and how we're planning for the future. We're going to be talking about water with the Oak Knoll Golf Course as well as all of the rest of the parks in Ashland tonight. So this chart right here basically explains the issue that we're experiencing. In 2021 in June, you can see, well, just starting over here, we've got the beginning of the fiscal year, July, and this is how we're laying this out. So July through June is our fiscal year. Generally, water usage is very low, well, obviously through the winter, and then kind of creeps up in April and May in some years, but not every year. And what we're seeing here is, this is pretty typical that because we have TID and we get a lot of rain during the winter, we don't spend a lot of money in these winter months unless it's unseasonably warm. Like, for instance, February of 2019 appears to have been a little bit warmer than usual, and we may have watered a little bit more. In April of 2020 and May of 2020 and even part of June of 2020, we're waiting for TID to come on and things are drying out, and so we're seeing things creep up. But then you get to June of 2021 and you see there we just went way off the scale. These are actual expenditures for water for Oak Knoll Golf Course. And unfortunately, that June of 2021, we watered way too much with city water. The way that we water out of the golf course is we fill up a pond and then we water from the pond. If we can't fill up the pond with TID water, which is Talent Irrigation District water or irrigation water, then we have a couple of options. We can not water at all, or wait for it to rain, or we can fill up the pond with culinary water, which is city water that's been treated at the water treatment plant. And that, as you can see, is not a very good strategy for our budget. That is very, very expensive. And this, I just wanted to show you this first to kind of lay out where we are right now and what we're looking at when we don't have TID. Commissioner Lont?
Yeah, wasn't June 2021, isn't that when the heat dome was here and we had the 116-degree weather?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. I mean, we could look that
I
up
believe
if
it
you'd
was.
like us. Yeah. So it was very, very warm. We wanted to keep the course open. It was not intended that we would spend this much in 1 month, but in order to keep the course open during that very dry, hot time without TID, this is how much it cost us. That was 1 month worth of watering. And later in June, right towards the end of June, is when TID actually came on, and then we had 25 days of talent irrigation water before we went back into not having any talent irrigation water. So, and just to be clear, it's not Talent's irrigation water. That's just the name of the district. That irrigation water, when it's flowing, belongs to the water rights holders, and we are a water right holder. So as you can see with this chart, 2019, 2020, and 2021, water costs are just going up. And if we don't do anything about this, this trend is just going to keep going until we're out of the drought. So it's very clear what we're looking at. Now, if you look at 2023, 2022 and 2023, if we project to water the golf course at a similar rate and using city water without TID, we're looking at a major expense that we frankly can't afford. You know, a typical water year is, or a fiscal year for watering at the golf course is between $15,000 and $30,000. Tripling that is just not an option, and it's not something that we've budgeted for. 2022, fiscal year 2022 and 2023 are partly projections, but we know based on calculations that we've done, if we were to try to keep the course as green as we can with TID water, this is what we would be looking at as far as charges. So going forward, this is the current fiscal year, and you might ask, well, where are we at with everything else? It's not just water out there. So the pro shop, we have a pro shop. We do sell some food. We sell alcohol. We sell other drinks, candy bars, and some golf equipment. Not much, t-shirts, hats, things like that, and tees and those types of things. The pro shop is just a little bit over budget for the year. I believe the explanation there was that the pro shop had purchased some inventory that they would use over a 2-year period, but had to make the purchase in the first fiscal year. Grounds maintenance, and grounds maintenance is where we see things like not irrigation, but fertilizer and equipment and things like that, but not personnel. None of these categories include personnel, and they're pretty far under budget because they haven't gotten to a lot of the stuff that they usually do in the spring. We're short-staffed out there. There's a lot of different things going on. Water, as you can see, we budgeted $29,000, and so far our year-to-date expenses, and this isn't projected, this is year-to-date expenses, are $78,000. And the reason for that, and if we were to continue on that rate, what we would end up is about $30,000 over budget. We're going to be $30,000 over budget at the end of this fiscal year because of the water. Now, generally, the distribution in materials and services between water, the pro shop, and grounds maintenance looks like this. This is a, let me move you guys so I can read this. Yeah, this is a normal materials and services fiscal year budget distribution. So this is, water usually is only 19% of the materials and services or operations budget. But this is what it's looking like right now because of the drought situation and the fact that we have used water to keep the golf course open, culinary water to keep the golf course open. Water is at 43%, pro shop is 37%, and grounds is 20%. So if you look at the difference here, water is supposed to be 20% and grounds maintenance is supposed to be 45%, and they basically just switched. And so we're spending so much money on water, we're not able to afford tools and fertilizer and all of those other grounds maintenance requirements that we would usually have. So I'm going to just go into a conversation here, and then I want to bring up, well, actually, let me go into this first. So, and then I'll take us off of share. But the Okanogan Golf Course Subcommittee has reviewed this information that I've given you, and they've also reviewed a little bit more information as far as some projections and things like that. But I think it's suffice it to say that if we use any culinary water on the golf course, we are only going to go further over budget. We're not at a point where it's like, okay, if we don't stop now, we're going to go over budget. We're already over budget for this fiscal year. So we're carrying that into the next fiscal year already. And if we use any culinary water going forward, we are just going to exacerbate that even further. We've only budgeted for what our normal fees are for water usage through Talent Irrigation District. So the golf course subcommittee has reviewed this, and Commissioner Eldridge.
I just was wondering if you could elaborate on what normal, how you're defining the word normal. Is that over a decade in the last, just what is normal? It's a weird phrase, I know, given our current state of our world.
Yeah. Well, I understand. So when I'm talking about normal as far as water usage, I'm talking about just the money that we typically pay to Talent Irrigation District for the water that we receive from them, and using no supplemental culinary water from the city of Ashland.
No, okay.
So that's what I mean by normal. And that's what we budget for.
So just a follow-up question. Are you saying that APRC, this is really the first time that they've had to resort to using culinary water to maintain the golf course? Or
no, I don't think it's the first time, but it's definitely the first time that it has gone this far and that we've gone over budget as a result of it. There might have been situations like, for instance, in April of 2020 and May of 2020, where we turned on the water a little bit early, and we didn't have TID yet, but we were able to roll that into the rest of the year, and we were able to fit that into our budget. If we spend our entire budget plus $5,000 for water in 1 month of a 12-month period, we've got some serious issues. So that's that. As far as that right there, that's the worst case scenario. $35,000 is the worst case scenario, and that's just like watering everything, keeping everything green. There's a 50% scenario where we only spend $15,000 a month, and we only water the greens, or the tees, and then maybe we could go down even farther from there. But the point is that we've already spent this year's and next year's budget to keep the golf course open as long as we have. And as far as water goes, we've spent this year's budget and next year's water budget to keep the golf course open to this point. If we use any more culinary water, we're just going to exacerbate that even further. It's already a bad situation, and it's going to be made worse. So even if we only water greens with culinary water, which is a question I think a lot of people have, is, well, can't you just water the greens and keep the golf course open? Yeah, we can, and I'm going to get to the motion from the golf course subcommittee, but it would require reallocation of funds and the commissioners to reallocate priorities as well, or at least to discuss priorities and to decide whether you would prefer to put more money towards this endeavor as opposed to another endeavor, because we're going to talk about budget cuts soon as well. And we can't just take money from somewhere else without it affecting other parts of the budget. It's just we are too tight to. There isn't a slush fund. In other words, it's not like we have a fund that we can just go to and solve this problem. Commissioner Bell.
So do you mean that if we were to only water the tee boxes or the actual the golf, the high priority golf areas, even just watering that with culinary water would still push us over budget?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
No, there's no question about it. Yes.
Okay. And you have more to do your presentation, right?
Yes, I do. So I have options. Now I don't want to close it here, because we do have options, and there could be a light at the end of the tunnel here. I'm just telling you what the worst case scenario could be if we don't get TID water and those types of things. I'm also making a case for you to understand that using culinary water to water the golf course is not a good plan. It's just not a good plan. But we do have some other options that we want to look at. And I want to just tell you that after presenting this information and talking about it a couple of times with the Oak Knoll Golf Course Subcommittee, their motion was to first to make a statement that the golf course is important in this community, And they feel that the commissioners, or recommend that the commissioners do everything that they can to maintain the golf course long-term, and in the short term, understanding that there are issues right now, not ignoring those issues, but in the short term, find creative ways to keep operations going while we look into alternative solutions for future droughts, which I think is a pretty good motion. It says do what you can. It doesn't imply that we can do more than we can, but I think that we could live up to that motion. And I want to talk about what we can do to live up to that recommendation. And again, we're no decisions here tonight. I just am trying to give you information, but there are some alternative solutions. And I'm not going to try and name every potential alternative solution, but these are the 4 solutions that kind of rise to the top. And TID may not be an alternative, it's the primary solution, but I just listed it in there anyways, because we actually don't know what's going to happen with that. So effluent is the water that comes from the wastewater treatment plant. And, it's a great idea to take the effluent, if you can, and put that on, say, a golf course to keep the golf course green. That's a great use of wastewater. And the water is actually treated. It actually, right now, goes right back into Bear Creek. There are ways that we can apply for and potentially even get permission to use effluent to water parks and things like that. But it's not an automatic. Just because we have effluent water does not mean that we can use it any way we want. The regulation of effluent is very restricted. And it's not so restricted that you can't use it anywhere. It's just you have to have permission to use it where you are proposing. So the 2 issues with this right now are there's a lack of infrastructure to get the water from the wastewater treatment plant to the golf course. Putting in pipes to go from the golf course or the wastewater treatment plant all on down off of Oak Street all the way up to the golf course would be a multi-million-dollar project that would take a very long time to accomplish. Think about the project that contemplated piping the canal along the trail and how long it took to discuss that and then where it went to. So these kinds of projects are not like, oh, that's a great, everybody agrees, let's just go do that and the money's available. It takes a long time to make these things happen. Now, one of the things I talked about with the Public Works Director is looking at a long-term plan where we start looking at effluent as a resource and potentially start looking at starting an infrastructure program where each biennium we can maybe do a little piece of infrastructure where maybe we start by going to the dog park and then we end up at Kestrel Park and the Nature Center and North Mountain Park and things like that. And eventually the system expands to where we can use that effluent throughout the city, but it's not something that we can do immediately. So as a long-term plan, I think this is a great idea for this current crisis we're in. It doesn't solve the problem. Now, we could use trucks to bring the water from the wastewater treatment plant to the golf course. We still need to apply for permits. I don't know how long it takes to get those permits, but that is a possibility and we could look into that. Now, just to give you a scale here, the pond is that we use to water the golf course out of is 300,000 to 400,000 gallons of water. We would be bringing in somewhere like 3,000 gallons of water per vehicle trip. It's not the best situation, but if we did it just in a pinch for watering a couple greens or maybe a little bit of extra water, maybe there's a way we can make that work, but we still have to look into permits and getting approval to use that water on the grounds where we're proposing it. So we're still looking into that one. That one is not dead, but watering the course completely by effluent is not a possibility in the near term. Wells is another one that keeps coming up, and the opportunity to use wells. Now, wells use groundwater. They drill down and you take water out of the ground and you bring it up and you put it on the ground, and eventually it soaks back down and goes into where it came from and all those types of things. But it's not really that straightforward that you can just go and drill a well and start using water. We are drought and water is scarce everywhere. And the state DEQ is responsible for evaluating wells, and not only wells, but how you use the water that's coming out of the well. And using it for a golf course is a questionable use of water, especially at this time during a drought. And considering that there's other uses that may be in front of us that would be higher, prioritized higher than a golf course if they were looking at applications side by side. And those are the EFU uses, the farm uses, things like that. We are still evaluating that one as well. There is a process that you have to go through to get permits. Again, it's not something we can just do overnight. It takes some time, but we haven't given up on it as a long-term solution, potentially. Now, some people have said, we heard from at least one person that there was at least some information out there that we used wells throughout the Ashland Parks and Recreation System right now. We do not. We do not have wells throughout the Ashland Parks and Recreation System. We use city water in some places, which is that culinary water, and we use town irrigation water in others. And we would use rain all the time if we could. That would be our preference. But the other thing I wanted to just throw out there is the YMCA park that we used to own, but was used exclusively by the YMCA, had a well. I just want to make it really clear that, just so everyone understands, that well was never a City of Ashland or Ashland Parks and Recreation well. It was owned by and it was applied for and approved for use by the YMCA. And when we never owned it or had any rights to it, but while we owned the property, they allowed us to use it for watering, and we did have permits for doing that. That's the only situation that I know of in the last decade where we have been using wells for watering ground. We do have one other well that's used at the it was a permitted well that had been capped, previous property owners, and down at the nature center, we do have one well that is where the water comes from for the interactive water feature at the nature play area. And it is not used, and it is not permitted either for watering grass and things like that. Commissioner Eldridge?
Yeah, two things. First, I just wanted to, I guess, kind of state the obvious that groundwater and surface water are hydrologically connected, and thinking that you can separate those two because there's no surface water, we're going to take groundwater, is pretty problematic. So that wouldn't really, to me, doesn't make much sense as a solution or possible solution. And then I'll preface this by saying I know absolutely nothing about golf. I've never played golf in my life. But I was just Googling around, and I wonder if another alternative solution might be, xeriscaping or creating a golf course that is different from a traditional golf course that is uses different types of vegetation and different types of design. But that may in and of itself be a very pricey venture. I don't know, but I thought I'd throw it out there.
Yeah, it's definitely an option for the long term. There's the only thing I'd throw in there is, to my knowledge, there's no such thing as a xeriscape green for putting, and there's certain things that have to be a certain way, but the rest of the golf, like where you're teeing off, and the fairway, I think, is even open for some changes and everything, but then when at the greens as well. But yes, that was brought up as an option, and I do think that is something we can look at over a longer period of time and becoming more drought resistant or resilient than we are now. So I do think that is an option going forward.
Yeah, I think, sorry, I was going to add one more thing, is that I guess in my mind, it really all depends. There's a big question mark in my head as to how important this golf course really is to the community. And I don't think I have a good idea of how much. I see that the golf course subcommittee is saying that, yes, it is important to the community and it's an integral part and it's critical. And I guess I'd love to have better information to know, how large of a group uses, values, and highly prioritizes the golf course. And yeah, just a better idea of how important it is to the community.
Yeah, and I think as we go forward, I think it's a very important thing. And, through some other public listening sessions, plus we can get you data on usage and unique visitors and things like that. As we're going through this, you can look at that. I was going to say something else though. Just to be very clear, if you go out to the golf course right now, you'll see that the entire golf course is green. That's just because we've been lucky enough to have rain and we haven't started watering yet. But when we water, we don't water all of the golf course. We don't water the roughs. We try to water as little as possible to preserve water. But the fact is that golf courses are just a heavy water use, even if you don't use water the roughs. But I just want to make sure that was understood, that we don't waste water on things that aren't part of golf, the golf ability, if you will, or playability of the course. And in some cases, we actually do affect playability, but so far it hasn't been to an extent that we have dipped in revenue so much that it's a concern. So I'll go through these last two just really quick, and then we'll have plenty of time to talk about things and to talk about how to move forward. City water, as you know, is very expensive. We have not budgeted for that. TID is the hopeful option, and I just want to say that we are still hopeful. I want to make it really clear that we have not given up on the golf course as far as a use. It's been around for a very long time. It's not a brand new use. It's been around, and we're going to continue to do what we can to keep it open until we receive direction from the commissioners to do something different. TID most likely is going to turn on this year, and TID is looking at options for how they're going to distribute the water. Some options are better for us than others. For instance, getting all the water in a 30-day period or 25-day period will keep us going for maybe 45 days. I don't know. Something around those during the hottest part of the summer, if it closes off, we could, with water in the pond, we could keep going for a little bit of time. But if TID were to stagger the water usage to where we had it for a few days and then we didn't, and then we did, and then we didn't, and that would extend the season a lot longer. And we could let the course brown up a little bit in between when we don't have water. Plus we have the water reserves in the pond. So I don't think the nail is in the coffin for the golf course. And I got a pretty direct question at the committee meeting last time, and when somebody asked, well, why are we throwing up all these alarms? People are very concerned that, you're talking about the potential for closing the golf course and scaring a lot of people, and we don't really know what the situation is going to be. And my response to that is a couple of things. One is, we know the situation is not good as far as water goes. We've already spent our entire budget for 2 years, okay? And that's just a fact. And that's what's kept the golf course open to this point. We know that water, our water supply is very low. It is not where it's supposed to be. And this TID season irrigation season going to be a normal irrigation season. So we definitely are in a crisis. And I would rather be in the situation, and I think it's our responsibility to be in the situation where we are informing people of what the potential is for the golf course, as opposed to hoping for the best, and then if the worst happens, coming out and saying, sorry, we never said anything, but here's the situation and we have to close. I would rather be in the situation where we're preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. But if the worst happens, we have a plan, we know what we're going to do, and it gives us time to really think about these things. Is it as bad as we think? Over this process that I've been looking into this, I've I've been able to open my eyes to some situations that I didn't think were possible when we started looking at this. And that's because we were going through this process. And I am hopeful that we will have irrigation water and we will be able to water the golf course through this year, and we will have playability through the year. Now, as far as Commissioner Eldridge's comment and question about the usability of the course and is it best use and, you know, is what we should be doing, that I think is something that we do need to get into a conversation about going forward. But, you know, until we are told to do something different, we are trying to keep the golf course open, just like the within reason, just like the recommendation from the subcommittee. So I think Commissioner Bell had a question.
Well, I have a question and a couple of comments, I guess. And have you finished with your presentation, Director Black?
I think I have. I'm ready for a discussion.
Okay.
And can I just point out first, we really, this is, I really like us, particularly looking at the time and what's on our agenda. I'd like this to be focused on questions, not trying to solve the problem at this point.
Okay, well, my question is, there is only so much water in the valley. We can pull water, the culinary water supply, that comes out of Reeder Reservoir, if I understand correctly, which may also be under strain this year. And we could pull water from the effluent from the wastewater treatment plant, but if I understand correctly, that water would otherwise go into Bear Creek, which is also going to be under severe strain this year. And when you say that this may not, that this is perhaps a bad year, no, it isn't a bad year. It's climate change, and this is what people are describing when they say climate change is going to be expensive. So there may be a solution for a year, perhaps, and maybe we can come up with a solution, but we do not have a long-term solution in my assessment.
No, and I'm not trying to imply in any way that there's a long-term solution here. We have a lot of discussing to do beyond just this immediate year. There's the future of a lot of things that we're doing needs to be discussed, because as you say, Commissioner Bell, this is global warming, and it's not, you know, we don't expect it to just all of a sudden we go back and have a 50-year spell where we don't have to worry about droughts or anything like that. So we are concerned.
Yes, Commissioner Lewis.
Maybe I think I have to explain the subcommittee meeting that we had the two presidents of the golf groups, and we had some golfers online as well. And so, you know, there might have been a certain amount of hope that maybe there would be enough rain to keep this thing going for this year. And then there's also a certain amount of denial as well, because Director Black lays it out, and it's a pretty harsh reality. And then I remember back when we had a goal setting with Patrick, and the goal was to try to make the golf course revenue equal to its expenses, and that we were working towards that. But as random chaos goes, we have droughts, pandemic, and then the smoke. And so these are all the things that you can't plan for as easy. So I think I personally don't play golf much, and I don't know that if we were voting to start a golf course today, right now, that would fly. But when I got on the commission, we had a municipal golf course. So what do you do if you have a municipal golf course? You try to run it as best you can. And it's like, we have the bigger issues of, I've had numerous people say, well, this should be affordable housing. It's 60 acres. And I don't know that there's developers in this area that would even want to look at that. And then, as my wife pointed out, well, each one of these houses will use water in its own right. So, you know, this may be what's the best ultimate use for this golf course. I've had the disc golf people say, hey, we'll supply the disc baskets, but that that's not the kind of revenue we're going to need to keep this thing open. And he said they don't care if it's watered or not, actually. And so, I mean, there's people trying to look for uses for the 60 acres. And right now it's a golf course, and our job is to run this golf course. And so I think the realities are, if this thing stays open all year, there's a miracle happening somewhere, because if you look at all the statistics and all the expenses, and then we didn't even mention the smoke, you know, and I know people planning to go to the coast for the summer, and, you know, so there's everybody pre-planning for the smoke. Maybe there won't be smoke, but then drought, smoke, pandemic, it's really making it difficult to run a golf course. And like I said, the reason this motion basically reflected a lot of hope that maybe there'll be some water. We got the next week, we're going to maybe get an inch of rain, but you know, this is just a Band-Aid on when we need a tourniquet probably. And so that's just, I guess that was expected from the golf subcommittee, because they're all golfers there, you know, and so it's like the hope is that we can maintain a golf course here, but and we weren't willing to start planning ahead of that and to say, well, what are we going to use this property for? So you know, and we have to be realistic. The housing thing, you know, it keeps coming up over and over and over again, but none of the people that talk to me about that are developers and have any understanding of development. So I don't even know that we want to even go there, to tell you the truth. I'm done.
Commissioner Eldridge, then Commissioner Bell.
I just wanted to very quickly add to Commissioner Lewis's comments is that we keep hearing about this cost recovery analysis that's going to come through. And it seems almost impossible to believe that this cost recovery analysis will not show that the golf course benefits a small group and is highly subsidized by city funds. And so it just, when you add things together, it doesn't look good.
But the senior center is incredibly subsidized, and the nature center is 90 cents on the dollar, both those. And I don't know that, you know, that we can make a case for. It's a certain amount of the population, but it is also, you know, hugely subsidized and very expensive as well. So, you know, you have to look at each thing we do in our in Parks and Rec and evaluate. Like, I think you're right. Evaluate the benefit to the community, and I guess I just see we have 60 acres to try to deal with, and that's the problem is of this property, and you know, the subsidy of the golf course. Yeah, whether it ever have paid for itself, I would agree, probably not going to happen. But if you could get, you know, 80% of it revenue, and maybe you have to subsidize 20%, well, then, you know, that's that. But when the senior center and the nature center, I mean, these are highly valuable, and I'm not saying we're going to have to reevaluate everything we do because of this budget cut thing. So there's going to be a lot of discussion on how we spend what dollars we end up getting. So all across the board. No, I'll shut up.
Commissioner Bell.
This is a
Oh,
question.
good, a question.
Is there a time when we are planning on talking about the golf course's destiny? Do we have a scheduled discussion of this at some point?
Yes, my approach with this is that even if TID came and said, "Oh, we're going to be on all season," this conversation needs to continue. We need to get into the weeds on this and talk about what the future is at the golf course. I know there are different opinions, and you know, I don't know how it's split within the community. That's something that we'll find out. but I do think it is necessary to keep this conversation going. So Commissioner Bell, I would say that we've started it, and we're not going to stop talking about the golf course until we get to the point where it's very clear what the future is. Is it a golf course? Is it a hybrid? Is it something completely different? So,
Sure.
so yes. What's that?
I was just going to say that at the rate that we're going, if this drought continues, that's going to be a financial, it's going to be an even greater problem for us. It seems that we need to come up with a better plan quickly rather than a long period of time. It seems within the next month or two, we should have a better sense of what we're doing.
Well, we'll have a better sense of what we're doing this year, but I don't think a month or two is a sufficient amount of time to plan for the future. And Commissioner Lewis, I think it's actually 70 acres of land. And, we do have a golf course right now, and it's been around for a long period of time. And one of the options is to keep the golf course. And that has to be one of the considerations that we look at. And it has to be on the table. It already is on the table. There are lots of other options as well. But I think, right now deciding what the future is, or being able to decide within a couple of months, I don't think it's feasible.
But we have to be able to decide to not spend the money on water. So we can keep the golf course and potentially not water it. So if that's an option, then okay, I'll agree with that.
And I'm just saying, in the next few months, we're going to be able to make decisions on this and the next fiscal year, but it will take longer than that to decide what the long-term future of the golf course is.
And then, so in that case, given the projected cost of the water that we're likely to have to use, can we make a decision within the next couple of months about what we're going to do for supplying water to the golf course or not?
Well,
because we need to make a decision quickly. Otherwise, it's going to be the expense is going to be very damaging.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what I was presenting to you here tonight. Is I'm not going to come back and ask you to water the golf course with city water. I'm not going to. There's not money to do that. But so I'm not at a point right now where I know if TID is coming on or not. So I can't say this is the timeline or anything like that. The next time I talk to you, I think we'll have more information and we'll be able to be more articulate about timelines and things like that. But I can guarantee you, I'm not coming back to you to ask you or recommend that we use culinary water in a year when we're probably going to be on water curtailment, whether it's mandatory or suggested. I'm not going to suggest that we use culinary water to water the golf course.
So can we, at the next meeting, could we do this deliberately and have it something to the effect of a motion that says that we will not be using culinary water or wastewater treatment or well water to water the golf course? If we have TID water, then we'll use that. But if not, then we won't be watering the golf course.
I hope that I can provide you enough information that you would feel comfortable and that you would feel like you had enough background in the community, felt like they had the time to present as well, to make that motion next time we meet. Yeah.
That's next week or next
No. I don't have enough information next week. I'm not going to have this on the agenda for next week. I need to know when TID is coming on. But I can tell you right now, I will not spend any money on water at the golf course for culinary water, regardless of your motion and in between motions or anything. I'm not going to spend money in between now and when we meet again, when we actually know what the future is on watering the golf course beyond the water we already have. We have options, other options though. I mean, we're actually not looking so bad. And I don't want people to go away from this thinking, oh, it's doomed. I'm telling you the truth when I say our goal is to keep the golf course open, but not to use precious resources to do it. We have resources right now, and I do think we'll be able to kind of eke by until TID comes on, but I can't promise that. But we're going to do what we can to see if we can do that. And we do have water in the pond right now. We do have water in the pipes right now. We can start watering greens when it's necessary, and we'll continue to do that and hopefully keep the course playable until such time as we can.
Thank you.
Commissioner Eldridge.
I just want to echo Commissioner Bell's sentiments, and I want to just state for the record that, well, I know it's a study session, but my personal feeling is I do not want culinary water to be used at all for any reason on the golf course for starting today into the future indefinitely. And if a motion is necessary to ensure that that's the case, I'd be willing to do that at the next meeting if it's possible.
Well,
But
it's only necessary if you don't trust me, because I will not spend money on culinary water at the golf course. I'm telling you that right now. And
It seems like.
and I think the motion,
Pardon me.
the motion could help in supporting me, but I don't, there's no intent of using any city water at all. There is no intent at all. You want to make the motion to support me, that's great, and to just make sure that the public realizes that this is the situation. You could actually give me some cover, but it's up to you.
You know, I just want, just hold on a second. I want to make something clear. Director Black has been very adamant about no culinary water being used, but we're all assuming the reason, but I think it's important to state the reason. The reason he's saying that is, I think secondary just for environmental reasons, but primarily it's because he is concerned about the budget and we don't have money to use that culinary water. And so that's really, correct me if I'm wrong, but Director Black, I believe that's why you're so adamant about not using it.
Well, yes, I do care about the environment, but literally we don't have the money to spend on culinary water. We do not. The next presentation I'm going to give is going to show that most of our parks are not even going to be watered this year, because most of them rely on culinary water to be watered. So I think you'll be able to see.
Excuse me. I interrupted Commissioner Bill, so if you want to complete your thought, please do.
Sure. If it seems to me that it would be best if the commissioners made an active decision to manage the water. That's why I think it would be worth making a motion rather than, it's a significant issue of public interest that seems to merit the commissioners, commitment to the one way or another on the issue. In any case, that was the reason behind making a motion. Next meeting, if that comes up during that meeting, if that's on the agenda for that meeting. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
You could give direction in this meeting. It's not out of line. If you wanted to just give direction, that's fine. But if you want to make the motion in the next meeting, that's fine too.
Actually, I think it's. I agree with Commissioner Bell, and I think we should just have it on the agenda for next week. It'll be a very short presentation, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of discussion. But I agree. I think we should just do it so we're on record.
Well, and I'll be on record too, saying I never suggested it in the first place. So just to be clear, but I appreciate the support, and it's and we'll put that on for the meeting next week.
Okay,
so,
let's move on if we can to Parks irrigation plan.
Oh, you have somebody who wants to comment on this item.
Ouch. I apologize. I believe we have somebody who wanted to speak on the from the public. I believe that was Jim Hinton. And could you please bring him in, Sean, and we'll give him 4 minutes.
Okay, I'm bringing in Jim Hatton right now. So Jim, you are here. You can turn your camera and mic on.
Great, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. As I'm listening to you talk, I wanted to reply. So I'm just going to kind of go through this. We did talk about I attended both of the study sessions for the golf course. Okay. And I read the materials extensively, and I provided written material, which you might want to read if you haven't. Anyway, we talked about buying water from Medford or something and trucking it in, and we don't know how much water we need on the greens. We just have this incredible graph, which can't be right. One big spike. If you study statistics, you know that's wrong. It's cut right at the fiscal year. I remember overwatering. It's possible we filled 2 ponds. Who knows? That number is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. That data needs to be studied more to reflect Lisa Eldridge's point. You need some data. Oh, it sounds to me, I didn't read through the agenda any farther than this, that you'll be talking about the water impact on the entire park system. Okay, that's the kind of comparisons you want to be making. Okay, and so I appreciate that you're doing that. I hate to see a golf course poorly managed into oblivion. Okay, you are aware of the other problems that are going on over there. Okay, and essentially poor maintenance of the golf course. Let's see. Thank you to Jim Lewis for talking about subsidizing. You do subsidize almost all park functions. And just remember, golfers are paying to play. Okay, our money is on the line when we play. All right, it's not like a free service that it's easy to say I like it. We actually pay money to play, and this needs to be considered that way. Used to be that I would play with a lot of tourists in the summertime, and the course was good, and they would be camping, but it was a cheap alternative. I met a lot of interesting people. That hasn't happened lately. We are watering the greens. Well, I don't think so. Michael said we're not watering the greens. At least they were testing the faucets today, the water sprinklers today, because I was there today. Also, Michael, there are courses with dirt greens. I'm not suggesting we do that, but there are courses with dirt greens. Let's see. I get a little disturbed, and I have to talk to the public a lot, because conflating closing the course with temporarily closing the course are 2 different ideas. So you say, I'm closing the course forever. That's a different issue than closing it for a while. 2 years ago, 2 years ago, I remember we did have a drought. The course did dry up. Sections of the fairway became very bad, and it was still playable. And we still played, and it didn't close. You'll notice this year that with the rain, right now, it's very lush. The course comes back. If they had actually watered the greens a little earlier this year, we would even have green greens like the rest of the golf courses in the valley. Okay, so you can close it temporarily if you think, why would you close it? If there's golfers would be doing irreparable damage to the course. Also, okay, when you take care of it, you know the grass is going to come back. There's certain things you could do to be sure that the bare areas that were created during the drought would come back well. And I don't think that was managed well. Let's see. I think I made all the points. I was interested. I listened through all the new park discussion. And Jim Lewis mentioned looking at maintenance costs, and Piper mentioned utilities. So I'm hoping that since you have those consultants, you're going to have a good model for thinking through the kinds of utilities that you need and how to think through your choices, and also about maintenance and how to think through your choices. Because you can say, I don't think a lot of people play golf because I don't know anybody who plays golf. Well, that could be true. Okay, very interesting people play golf, by the way. Okay, so
Mr. Hatton, your 4 minutes is up.
Okay, I try to talk as fast as I can. Anyway, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Okay. Next on our agenda is Parks Irrigation Plan, planning, I would say.
So we can't spend as much time on this probably as we did the other things, but I'm just gonna say really quick that we're just gonna have to accept that brown is the new green, okay? And the reality is that, whoops, this isn't what I wanted to do. The reality is that we don't have enough water to water everything. And so we have put together a plan, and we've had, oh my gosh, what's going on here? We've had the help of Sean and Tara and Bill and Wes on our team, and going through and looking at all the potential options for watering. And we've come up with a matrix that was published in the information that was set out. And I want to just go straight to that. The issue is, how do we get through the water season with little to no water, plus budget issues, and still provide some places for people to recreate? What we came up with was going through and doing a prioritization of the parks. And we went through and we prioritized high, medium, low, and then there's trees and shrubs as well. With a couple of parks, we would just look at trees and shrubs and make sure we don't lose trees. High priority areas would be just a few parks, and that would be Lithia and North Mountain. Lithia, because it's our tourist destination. I think it's very important also for the community that they at least have some place where you can go and walk. And we do have fire issues as well and things like that, because half of the park is wild. It's not completely watered, but we do actively water some of the wilder areas in the park during the summer, during fire season. North Mountain Park, but we're mainly focusing on the grasses and things like that. North Mountain Park is a high profile area as well, because we earn revenue off of it. We lease it out to different groups, soccer clubs in the school district, and we have a lot of different people coming and going, and activities and things like that, who expect to be able to play and perform on grasses that can hold up to what they're doing. And that's it. Those are our high priorities. The rest of our parks, Triangle, Garfield, Hunter, Briscoe, those four would be medium, and medium would be to reduce irrigation. There's going to be visible impacts that people are going to see. These are the brown is the new green parks, but we're going to make sure trees get watered, and we do have a water play area at Garfield Park. It's recirculated water, things like that. We could continue to do in some way, maybe not exactly the way that we have in the past. And then we have other parks. And the majority of our parks, Sherwood, Ash Creek, Clay Street, Dog Park, Garden Way, Glenwood, Kestrel, Railroad, Scenic, and Riverwalk, would be low priority. And low would mean that there would be significant reductions in irrigation, there would be severe visible impacts, and there would be loss of areas of these parks in the lawns. And they would come back at some point with some work and some water, but there would be some losses to some areas. And if you have ever seen areas that we have lost, because in some situations, not intentionally, we have lost some areas, most visibly in North Mountain Park over the last few years. We did lose a small area there, and it took a while to get it back, but it does come back. It can be a little bit expensive, but North Mountain Park is a little bit different, because those are high profile playing fields, as opposed to Dog Park, which is not a play field. It's dogs running around, and they're going to run around on whatever's beneath their feet regardless. So this is what we're looking at. We're adopting, again, the brown is the new green, because we can't keep everything green. People have to change their expectations, just like people change their expectations with weeds. When we went to no herbicide pesticides, people are going to have to change their expectations with these open spaces as well. There are going to be brown areas. There are going to be some parks that don't look like they've been watered in weeks, because they haven't. But there will be the opportunity to water to some extent. And I just want to share just a little bit of information. For instance, Lithia Park would be watered 5 days a week. North Mountain Park 5 days a week, and then we would start going down where Garfield Park used to be watered 5, it would go down to 4, and then more drastically when we get down to the lower areas, we're also reducing the percentage of watering and things like that, how much water is actually going on and times. And when you get down to low, like Scenic, you might see let's see here, a percentage reduction in runtime of 30%, and plus a reduction in the number of days as well. So with this information and the projections, and yes, we have done projections. Yes, we do know how much it costs to buy water. We do know what the rate is that comes out of our sprinklers. We are able to estimate, and we have provided estimates on what it would cost to water not only the high profile golf course, but also these smaller parks and these high profile parks. So we are able to adequately forecast what we think the budget impacts are going to be. And we can say that, based on the information that was in your packet, that we can reasonably anticipate that will come in where we projected. Sean or Bill, do either of you want to make a comment before we finish the staff portion here?
No, I think you pretty much covered everything there. I'll let the commissioners know that it'll be a quite extensive process, depending on weather and all the parameters with that. We'll be running around quite a bit, just making adjustments as we go along. This is kind of a template, but as we move through, we'll be definitely making adjustments as we go. But just to, reassure you, it's going to rain every night until July 3rd. So we'll be good to go.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
Optimist.
Yeah.
Sean put most of this information together, so I want to make sure he gets a chance to talk.
I would just add quickly and back up what Bill said. Staff is going to be in the field looking at conditions on the ground. We're going to be looking at our monthly expenses and reevaluating as the irrigation unfolds.
So I use the term brown as the new green because I'm from the Salt Lake metro area, and I visit once in a while. And if you know that area, it's growing a lot if you've driven through to go to the national parks or whatever. And that's what you see in those big metro areas is slogans like that, just getting the information out and saying, this is intentional. We plan on using signs, letting people know that these parks are looking bad. We know that. We intended that because there is a situation here. And I like to say it's not only a drought in terms of in the environment, but it's a drought in terms of the fiscal, in the fiscal terms as well. So, and just the LA Times the other day reported, I think last week on the day that we had our golf course subcommittee meeting, they had a big press conference, the county did, and said, you can't water, you're not going to be able to keep your lawns green this year. And they're doing that now. And the city, that's the city and county that's doing that. And our city isn't to that point yet, but I think it's very likely that we'll get to a curtailment point this year again. And that's my presentation. I just want to inform you that we do actively think about these things. We do actively make plans. These are our plans. If you have issues with these plans, let us know. I don't plan on bringing this to the commissioners for an approval because this is a staff level decision. These are the types of decisions that we make day to day. And unless you feel like we've really missed the mark on our high, medium, and low priorities, this is the plan we want to go forward with.
Commissioner Bill.
No, I think your plan is appropriate for the circumstances, and I appreciate you're doing the work to try and provide the best experience for people in the parks and keep them as healthy as possible.
Anyone else? Okay.
I failed to introduce Bill. Bill Miller is a supervisor with Ashland Parks and Recreation. He's been in charge of irrigation for a long period of time, and he's been a member of the APRC family for quite a long time. And so thanks, Bill, for being here.
Yes, thank you, Bill, and thank you, Director Black, for your presentation. We are going to move on, and the next item on the agenda is proposed Nutley easement.
Oh, is that what's next? So let me just explain this really quick. I'll bring up the map if you want to see it. Well, I do need to bring up the map, but the Nutley easement is a request from a property owner that is close to Nutley Street and next to a property owner who already has an easement from Nutley to their private property. The easement is over Parks land. It is part of Lithia Park. I'm going to bring that up right now so you can see. And we have granted vehicular access to the driveway on that previous easement. Sorry, this is taking a second. And what I'm recommending here today is that the commissioners consider, or at least look at this and plan to consider another or adding to that easement to allow the property owner who has made the request to have equal access across that easement. So as far as the map goes, this is the property that's requesting the easement. That's 108 Granite Street. This is the property 114 Granite Street that has the easement right now. The red is park property, and this is the ice rink down here. This is the ice rink chiller, Nutley and Granite here, and then Windburn down here. So this easement here, I believe it's 16 feet wide, provides vehicular access onto this 114 Granite so that they could relocate this little house back here, this bungalow, and use that as an ADU. It's interesting that this property 108 already has an easement over 114. They just don't have an easement out to Nutley Street. So they can actually, they already have rights to get to this point, which is the edge of our property, but they can't get onto Nutley Street. So they're requesting an easement. I think it would be wise to consider this. I think I don't believe that there is any detrimental effects that would come from granting an easement like this. I do believe we could talk to them about the price. We did charge 114 Granite Street to access this easement. That information is in the packet. And I would just suggest that the commissioners consider this. And you don't need, obviously, no decision tonight, but I would just need direction whether or not you'd like me to continue to pursue this with the 108 Granite Street property owner, or if this is a no-go for the commissioners.
Okay, Commissioner Bill, Commissioner Bachman, Commissioner Lewis, in that order.
If the area on the map that was black and is outlined in that goes from that goes across Nutley property into 114 is already an easement, which it sounds like it is, then I am entirely in favor of extending the easement to 118 Nutley on the other side of 114 Nutley.
And just let me point out, this is not, we're not making any decisions. This is brought up as information, and we will have a discussion about whether we wanted to move forward with this or not at a future meeting. Commissioner Bachman.
Okay, understanding that, I'll throw my hat in with Commissioner Bell that I think we should give Michael direction from this meeting to pursue this and get more information.
Commissioner Lewis.
I would agree with the two other commissioners, and to bring everybody up to speed on why we granted the easement in the first place was to save the Raggedy Ann house, which was, I think was built in 1914 and was going to be moved off the site. And I know that was a long and enduring process, but it ended up getting founded, and it's going to be a viable residence for the community. And I think the least that would give the next door neighbor a chance to maybe have a little more infill too. So since that's what the city feels is important, is adding to the infill instead of sprawl, I think we would be helping him in that way.
It sounds like we have direction to move forward. So let's move on to the actually next item is being removed from tonight's agenda and will be on next week's agenda. So that brings us to proposal for security camera at the perimeter of Japanese Garden.
Okay, before we talk about security cameras, I want to talk about vandalism. And I think this is an appropriate time to talk about this because we are talking about cameras, and I am going to try and justify the use of cameras on a limited basis. And I'm going to base that off of vandalism. And I'm going to say right now, we've taken a very passive approach to vandalism, including graffiti. And at this point in time, and Bill Miller's here, and if he wants to comment on this, I want to let him. But we have been getting hit extremely hard with vandalism. And I want to just give you some examples. If you haven't seen these already, I hope hopefully this will give you an idea of what we're dealing with. And you may never see these because, for instance, this is Mark, one of our employees. He's standing next to the Butler Perazzi fountain, and somebody has spray painted a red dollar sign, at least it looks like a red dollar sign, on the bottom of a 100-year-old fountain that was very hard to scrub and try to get removed. And the reality is that, and Wes Casali is here too, by the way, and we're going to talk about some of his parks as well. So I want to ask him to come in as well and comment as well when we get a chance. So, but they went out there and they cleaned this immediately, and you can go up there right now and you can still see a little bit of pink on the underside of that bowl, but you're not going to see anything on these globes, this little frowny face here, and some of the other things that they painted on the globes, because our crews will get out there and clean them. And we also have volunteers that come out and clean. And so we're spending a lot of time and effort cleaning up these messes, and they're not limiting it to the built environment. I mean, these are trees, this is everything that's being tagged, and it seems like it's out of control. These parks here, I believe the one on the right is in Lithia, the one on the left is in Hunter Park, and looks like we kind of edited one of those to make it appropriate for television, or for at least Zoom. Now, just because this is a park that we have a lot of Little League and different things like that. And this is actually the Little League shed that is being tagged here. Some other ones, this is the band shell. This is a historic structure, but it has a nice flat face that takes paint pretty well, it looks like, and it's getting tagged over and over again. And we'll go out and we'll keep cleaning it and painting over it and doing whatever we can. And it just keeps happening and happening. There are also some vandalism that we're experiencing where we're having doors pried open, and that's actually breaking into places. And then we'll just have somebody who decides that they feel like it's necessary to break a sink. Just let's break a sink, and it happens quite a bit. Sometimes this happens because I'm not even going to speculate why this happens, but this happens. This is another example of the David Grubbs Memorial. And if you're not familiar with that, you should look into it. But the David Grubbs Memorial should be a place that's pretty sacred. I mean, it's a very,
Michael,
it's a memorial. I'll just put it that way. It's a memorial. And this is on the left, you've got it before, and on the right, you've got after. And this is the kind of thing that we're experiencing throughout town. on a regular basis. I've just changed. Let me know if it doesn't change. We've got here a door from one restroom, I believe on the left, it's at the skate park. And remember. And you know, we don't judge what's written, but the fact is it's not supposed to be written there. And then the inside of the Kaye restroom. This is only inside of one restroom. We've got plenty of other restrooms that look as bad or worse as that one does. Hunter Park at the ball fields again. And then, so I wanted to talk about that first. And I wanted to give you a couple of pieces of information. Okay, so Bill and Wes, could you comment? Bill, why don't you go first, and then Wes, on the impact of graffiti, and kind of just talk about, just really quickly. I showed pictures, but you guys are on the ground. It's your staff that's out there working on it. Just kind of comment really quick on the impact.
Well, like Michael said earlier, I've been with the parks for over 20 years now, and by far, I'd say the last year, this is a continuing, a weekly event. And we'll come in the morning, and any more the staff in Lithia and along with Wes's crew, we'll go out and see, and we'll find on a weekly basis, we're finding spray painting, vandalism, things like that. And like Michael showed you on some of those pictures, it doesn't matter if it's a building, a flat base, it's a tree, picnic table, it's things like that. And when the Perazi was tagged, because of that surface, we had tried everything. And if, like Michael, Director Black said, if you go by, you can still see a little bit of tint in there. So it's becoming like I said, it's becoming a weekly event. And I did, about a month ago, I was asked from the Ashland Police Department. I went and testified at the grand jury on an individual that they did arrest, and he has been arrested 3 other times. And the college was there testifying on the vandalism there, and that this one individual did. So we've been having a spreadsheet continuously with Sean, and we've been in constant communication with the police on whatever we find. We give them the information, and if they do happen to arrest somebody, they can go back onto that spreadsheet and see these photos and maybe link them in with that.
Thanks, Bill. Wes, you're on mute still, buddy.
Thank you, Michael. So segue in from Bill and Michael, yeah, we are seeing such an uptick in vandalism, even illegal garbage dumping, cutting locks, breaking into buildings. So, you know, it's staff time, it's money spent. You know, we're, like we say, working and attaching a dollar amount, all the staff time to this spreadsheet that we're working with the local authorities. We really hope that we can catch people that are doing it or make our buildings more secure. And obviously, we're not providing a very good product for the public when, like Bill says, we spend a lot of staff time that we don't have to fix all these things, and then the next day it's back. So it's a definite problem in the community, and we are doing everything we can to keep up on it. We want the public, the pictures Michael showed, the depiction from the Kaye. We have a lot of tourists coming into town, a lot of people coming, and that's that was kind of one of our flagship restrooms, and it gets hit extremely hard. So we're definitely doing everything we can to minimize it.
So thank you both. Commissioner Bachman?
Just Mike, Director Black, I'm sorry. To what extent, if any, can this be attributed to staff reductions, fewer police patrols, etc.?
Can I answer that in just a minute?
Yes.
I just wanted to say a couple other things really quick before we tied up, but I want to answer that and any other questions as well. Let me just say, I want to give you a couple of stories really quickly. In my staff report, I included the story about the Golden Spike and the monument that was just erected in Railroad Park. and that was vandalized. And the day that it was going to be dedicated, they showed up and it was painted all over. And it wasn't just the artist who's offended or me who's offended, because it's our staff who has to clean it up or anything like that. But that monument stood for more than just the railroad. It was honoring the Chinese laborers who built that railroad through there. And there were some comments that came from people in our community who were deeply hurt and offended by that. The other thing I wanted to say is, just before I end here, is just one bit of information that we just received recently, which is there is a camera at the skate park. The commissioners approved it. The police department installed it. And it's one of those, I don't know all of the specifics about it, but I believe it is just on and they can get on and watch it whenever they want. Well, one of the police officers decided to get on and watch on this camera, and was able to identify 2 individuals who were spray painting graffiti, and it wasn't just the skate park. That graffiti was linked to other graffiti throughout the town, and they were able to identify them because of that camera that was there, because they can't be everywhere all at once. And then I also have to say, I am not proposing in any way that we litter every open space with cameras, but I believe that there are situations that do justify having cameras, and maybe those cameras should have limits on how they're used and when they're used and things like that. But when we are putting things out in the community that have a tendency, or have what you would call or could become an attractive, I don't want to say nuisance, because we don't build nuisances, but an attractive element for people to vandalize, and we can identify that in advance, those might be opportunities where we could use a little bit of extra help with enforcement. And I also want to say, I read 1984. I really liked the book. And I know people bring it up a lot, but just remember, 1984, he had cameras in his house. They were watching him do calisthenics in the morning, and when he didn't bend over far enough, they let him know. We are not talking about anything like that. We are talking about public areas where people should have no presumption of privacy, or the assumption that they're in a public place. It's not a restroom. It's not inside their home or anything like that. These are public places. And we also would like to propose, if we can go forward with this, propose time and use restrictions on cameras, so that it's not on all the time when it doesn't need to be, and things like that. I need to do my recommendation, show you what the point I'm trying to get to here, and then I'd be happy to answer questions. And I'm going to get to that question first, Commissioner Bachman, on the resource issue. So let me just get this back open here. Share screen. Okay, so what am I asking for here? I'm asking for you to consider, and I'm not trying to say this is going to solve Hunter Park or anything like that, but to consider that there is a big attractive implement that's going in at the Japanese garden that will be defaced. I'm absolutely positive of. But I believe that adding cameras in the correct way could help enforcement, law enforcement, so that they could appropriately address these things when they do happen, which could provide education to the public, which could potentially reduce further instances of this in the future. And what we are proposing is the use of cameras at 4 locations at the Japanese garden. And I may request this in other places. This isn't the only place where I think it could be used, but this is the one we have under construction right now. These stars would be where they would be used. The way that they would be implemented would be through what's called a pole. Well, it'd be a pole and what's called a solar lantern. And I got some pictures off the web that are grainy. I can see But the idea is that on the top of these poles, there would be a decorative element that's consistent with the park and the Japanese garden. The poles themselves would be decorative as well. They would be in the ground, concreted in the ground, and they would have Japanese, traditional Japanese elements that would help them fit in with the garden. The conduit would be inside the pole, and then as you come up 9 to 12 feet, the height of the pole, there would be cameras mounted on the pole, and then on top there would be these solar lanterns that would be the primary focus of the eye when you're looking at these, and would fit in well with the garden, as I stated, I believe anyways, and could provide a sort of a way to potentially monitor and to enforce when we do have an issue. The idea that I have is that these lanterns, or these these cameras would be used on a limited basis, where they would only be on at night, when they're recording, and if something were to happen, they would be a resource for law enforcement to use, and just provide oversight at night. I view the garden as kind of a like, as much as is going into it and everything, it's kind of like a building. It has doors, it has walls and everything. The only thing it doesn't have is a roof. But as far as buildings go, we lock buildings when we leave. We turn on the alarms and things like that. And we even have cameras inside of our buildings. But this is, in my opinion, is akin to a building without a roof on, and it's exposed. We're lucky we don't have to pay for the construction of this garden. We're lucky to be able to get such a high quality garden without having to use funds from the citizens of Ashland to do that. But I do think it's our responsibility to do what we can to protect it going forward. And while I'm on cost, there is a cost to these cameras, but the Parks Foundation has stated through a donation that they will pay for the full cost of the cameras, the poles, and the solar lanterns. As far as the question, because it's already been asked, Commissioner Bell, I'm just going to go ahead and answer it if that's okay. What can we attribute? Can we attribute this to the loss of staff or the potential reduction in forces with the police department? And, I've been thinking about that since you said it, and I just don't know how to answer that question. I think for us, I don't think the increase in graffiti has anything to do with the reductions in staff. Getting it cleaned up, though, and how long graffiti stays there does have there is a nexus between that and our staffing. As far as patrols and things like that with the police department go, I don't think I could answer that question, but I'd be happy to poll Chief O'Mara and ask him if he would like to answer that.
Commissioner Bell.
I have to leave. I support the idea of using limited amounts of surveillance camera coverage to help protect our most valuable assets and minimize the cost to staff, or minimize the amount of staff hours that are soaked up by trying to repair the damage that's done to these places. So thank you, everybody. I'm sorry to have to cut out early.
Okay, trying to wrap this meeting up. Are there anything else that needs to be said tonight? This is going to come back later. So is there anything that needs to be said tonight on this topic? Okay, we'll move on to items from commissioners, staff. I will tender any brief comments.
Well, I have a story for you. I'm just kidding. I don't have a story.
Okay. I think anything that we didn't talk about tonight can be, well, we'll be back next week and we'll have another opportunity. So thank you everyone for your attention and your thoughts and questions, and look forward to seeing you all next week. And I'm adjourning the meeting. Good night.
Night.
Good night.